Good afternoon and welcome to World Trade Week, New York City, 2021. I'm Andrea Ratte. I am the chair of the New York District Export Council. For those of you who are not familiar with the New York DEC, as we like to call it, DEC, we are a group of international trade professionals nominated by the Secretary of Commerce to support the mission of promoting U.S. exports. And that's why we're all here today. As volunteers on the New York DEC, we are part of a network of district export councils in every state in the United States. World Trade Week is the signature event of the New York District Export Council. We have a lot of partners who help put this together, working over a one-year planning period to bring you the programming that we're bringing today. Now in its 13th year, and maybe I'll go out on a limb and say this is maybe our lucky 13, this is World Trade Week kickoff event has always been a sold out event prior to 2020. This year, 2021, we have seen participation from our partner organizations up by 25%. And those partners include local and foreign chambers of commerce, foreign consulates, and other players in the international trade ecosystem. I'd invite you to explore who those partners are either on LinkedIn, on the World Trade Week site or page rather, as well as the World Trade Week NYC.org website. I'd like to take a moment just to recognize the World Trade Week committee members. Peter Bankston, New York Public Library, Mary Estelle Reichman, a former U.S. trade negotiator, Barney Lehrer, New York District Export Council, Carmela Mamas, U.S. Department of Commerce, Nancy Plager, International Women's Entrepreneurial Challenge, IWIC Foundation, Nicole Polidoro, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, me, Wanda Sample, the New York, New Jersey Foreign Freight Forwarders and Brokers Association, Joe Schoonmaker, our esteemed treasurer of the New York District Export Council, Lena Skoo, our intrepid leader from Weissman Center for International Business at Baruch College, and Kinda Yunus from ITAC, the New York City Chamber of the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. I'd also like to recognize Diego Gatesco, who's been our tech support from U.S. Department of Commerce. Thank you very much, Diego, for making this work. So to kick things off, we are now going to feature, we have the pleasure of having a quick visit from the new Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo. Secretary Raimondo is serves as the 40th U.S. Secretary of Commerce. And in this role, she is focused on a simple but vital mission, I think we would all agree, which is to spur good paying jobs, empower entrepreneurs to innovate and grow, and to help American workers and businesses compete. She was formerly the 75th governor of Rhode Island and the first woman governor to hold that office in that state. While in office as governor, she kickstarted the state's economy and made record investments in infrastructure, education, and job training. Sounds like a familiar platform for today. You can follow Secretary Raimondo on Twitter at SEC Raimondo. And with that, I believe we're going to be featuring her welcome video. Thank you, Secretary Raimondo. That is a really authentic and inspiring message that can kind of give us a roadmap forward. Before we move to the announcement of this year's World Trade Week awardees, I forgot I was supposed to mention at the outset that for our attendees, please note that this event is being recorded. And so if you do have an objection to that, we are rather underway at this point. I'd also like to mention that during the presentations, any questions can be typed into the Q&A box, which is at the right-hand side of your screen. So with that, we'll move to another highlight of today's event, which is the announcement of this year's World Trade Week award winners. These are companies that have demonstrated an economic resiliency and an ability to reimagine and build, to use the Secretary's words, during an especially challenging year. I'll go through quickly this list of awards, and I would encourage everyone, if you'd like more information, you see the links on the slide there, and everybody's listed at worldtradeweeknyc.org/awards. In some categories, we just had so many good candidates that the committee opted to highlight 2 in each category. So the first category, Small Business Global Trade Award, is presented to a small business in the New York metropolitan region whose growth and achievements in their industry exemplify international success. First up is HB Architectural Lighting. Second in Small Business Global Trade Award is Lowly Beauty, and you can see the link for them as well. The next award is Global Supply Chain Award, and that is presented to a company, organization, or individual in the New York metropolitan region for leadership in global supply chain management. We're pleased to recognize Jaguar Freight Services from Long Island, New York, for this award. The next award, Global Trade Award, is presented to an organization that has demonstrated continuous dedication, commitment, and significant contributions, which have influenced the growth of trade and investment in the New York region. This year, the first of our 2 award winners is the Cyber Center of Excellence at the Marsh & McLennan Agency. Second in the Global Trade Award category is our very own U.S. Commercial Service Office of New York, which I just learned today has been in existence for close to a century, and they continue to do very good work with our exporters. Next up, we had 2 Rising Star awardees. Both actually are graduates of the New York State and City higher ed systems, and speaks really well to the education and academia that we have to offer here across the state of New York. The Rising Star Award is presented to an individual under 40 in the New York metropolitan region for their achievements in the field of international trade. I'd like to recognize Geraldine Chadenat, the marketing director of Estee Lauder and a graduate of CUNY's own Baruch College. And on the next slide, the Rising Star Award to Mabiani Dutra, the founder of Da Costa Verde. She is a graduate of SUNY's Fashion Institute of Technology. Bravo, ladies. Next up, we have a Sustainable Solutions Award, which is presented to a company in the New York metropolitan region offering products and services that contribute to socially and environmentally sustainable solutions internationally. This year's award goes to the agritecture consulting firm in New York. Next is the Innovation Award, which is presented to a company, organization, or individual in the New York metropolitan region for their achievement in implementing a new idea or approach that has made a positive contribution to the field of international trade. And this year, we're pleased to recognize Panjiva Inc. in New York. The World Trade Week, New York District Export Council Appreciation Award is presented to an organization or individual for their contribution to World Trade Week NYC, and what more appropriate than Thomas Nett. Thomas, we thank you for your support this year for this year's virtual event. And finally, we've actually just come from a small ceremony led by Congressman Carolyn Maloney for the presentation of the U.S. Department of Commerce Export Achievement Certificate, which was presented to Beauty Solutions Limited, a New York City-based company. So congratulations to all our awardees. What a wonderful lineup of companies, and congratulations all your hard work and representing trade this year. Next, I'd like to move to the next part of the program, which is very exciting. I'd like to turn it over to Kinda Yunus, the Executive Director of ITAC. Kinda brings to ITAC over 25 years of experience in entrepreneurship, corporate development, and operations management. Before joining ITAC, she was Chief Operating Officer of Revolution Wear, a menswear and athletic products company that was involved also in global distribution. Prior to that, she co-founded a patent-owning marketing technology company, which helped to bridge the gap between online marketing and in-store commerce. She also previously worked as management consulting at a number of technology and internet startups, focusing mostly on operations management, as well as with PepsiCo's corporate strategy department, where, for you snack lovers, she was part of the team responsible for determining Frito-Lay's international expansion strategy. Kinda started her career at Goldman Sachs in mergers and acquisitions. She holds a Bachelor of Commerce degree from McGill University in Canada and an MBA from INSEAD in Paris. Kinda, thank you for joining us, and now over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. On behalf of the World Trade Week Steering Committee, it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker today, Mr. Tony Uphoff. Tony is president and CEO of Thomas, the parent company of thomasnet.com, which is the leading platform for product sourcing and supplier selection for both the industrial and manufacturing markets. His career in business information has given Tony a ringside seat for every major technology transformation of the last 25 years. Tony often speaks on the digital transformation of business and the overarching impact that technology is having on business management and also on leadership. In addition to his role at Thomas, Tony also serves as an advisor and board member to several tech and media companies. He's also a mentor at Mucker Labs, and he is a trustee of Linfield College. I will end by just adding a few more personal data points to give you a better sense of who Tony is as a person. He's a California native. He's also a lifelong surfer. He collects guitars. And last but not least, he was featured in the New York Post last summer for his fashionable pandemic mask. Tony, we're extremely honored to have you with us today. Thank you again for joining us and for sharing your insights with us.
Kinda, thank you first off for that fantastic introduction. You are clearly doing some additional research, which is great to see. I also want to thank you for all you do at ITAC, and thank you to everybody for having us having us join and share some of our insights, and hopefully you'll find these helpful for you as you manage through this really remarkable time. I'd like to center my remarks around the idea of the future of manufacturing, but I'd like to emphasize the future is here right now. Oftentimes when you are living and leading and managing through a truly transformative period, it's very difficult to get a sense of perspective. But make no mistake, we are watching an unprecedented series of dynamics come together to create a massive transformation, certainly of North American manufacturing, but also global manufacturing. And along with it, it is both creating opportunities but challenges as we manage through this really remarkable time in the marketplace. As a bit of background as I get going, for those that may not be familiar with our company, Thomas, we're made up of 4 major components. Most of the data that I'm going to be speaking about today comes from thomasnet.com, our core platform, which, as Kinda mentioned, is the leading product sourcing and supplier selection and evaluation platform for manufacturing. We also have Thomas Product Data Solutions, where we produce sophisticated computer-aided design and building information modeling files for companies to be able to showcase products and services and then syndicate those. Thomas Marketing Services allows us to do very sophisticated marketing programs on behalf of manufacturers and industrial OEM product providers out into the marketplace. And then our most recent business is Thomas Industrial Data. We gain insights from the real-time buyer behavior data that we're able to monitor and provide that to audiences. We have just over 1.2 million active registered users of thomasnet.com. On an average month, we have about 2 million sourcing sessions. So when you unpack the math there, every second, an engineer, procurement professional, an MRO, or other industry professional is sourcing a product or evaluating a supplier on the thomasnet.com platform. We have over 500,000 suppliers on the platform. They're categorized into over 70,000 product and service categories. We have a very large portion of the Fortune 1000 regularly sources on the platform, close to 93%. And while I won't take you through each of the data points around the dials, a couple of things I would mention here. We have a very broad cross-reference of what most of us would consider to be small to medium business, as well as large companies, as identified by Fortune 1000 designation. The other thing to bear in mind here is a remarkable demographic stretch from an age point of view. And I would emphasize this to everybody on this, this event. We are living through a very interesting time, not the least of which is lots of the things that we know to be true, but maybe one of the subtle things that is not obvious is that as of 2017, we now have a generation as large as the baby boom generation in the workforce at the exact same time. This has never happened in history. So demographers have only studied the baby boom generation, which again was the largest generation ever created. This is creating a fascinating dynamic in business today, and we're going to touch on this in a couple of areas. Bear in mind, millennials, if I could group that generation together, are what we think of as digital natives. They don't remember a world without the internet. And so their expectations and understanding of business is quite different than perhaps other generations. The industries that are represented by the sourcing on our platforms is literally A through Z. You would recognize most of these companies. So whether it's aerospace and defense or automotive, through to oil and gas, retail, and telecom, one of the things, the way we look at the manufacturing marketplaces is we interpret that quite broadly. So things like food processing or pharmaceutical manufacturing, healthcare and medical manufacturing, or equipment production fits into our category. So we're able to see an awful lot of sourcing across those categories as opposed to what many people think of as the traditional bending steel component of manufacturing itself. All right, let's get to some data. So right now, out of the 72,000 product or service categories, over the last 12 weeks, we're starting to see some fascinating dynamics of shifting into what products are being sourced. So you see products and services like adhesives and steel, and packaging. And those reflect something that's kind of interesting, because if you jump down to number 6, where you see face masks, and number 8, where you see nitrile gloves, those have been at the top for obvious reasons. During the pandemic, there was a massive amount of sourcing. We actually were able to identify the pandemic before it became global news by the intense level of sourcing for PPE, medical equipment, and surgical gloves. So I think in a positive way, we're starting to see a balancing that reflects a couple of different things in the manufacturing economy, if I can phrase it that way. You're starting to see raw materials, base level materials with a significant increase in demand, which bespeaks an economy that's coming back online. You're starting to see infrastructure projects and a lot of other things that are contributing to that. In addition, you can also see some kind of fascinating dynamics here. If you look at number 4, printed circuit boards have been consistent in their demand for a number of years, and every once in a while there'll be a shortage of a key component or something that'll drive some variability or volatility in that. What's really driving the challenge for PCB boards right now, and the reason they're such in demand, is automobiles have become rolling computers. And so the competition for PCB boards demand has expanded beyond the traditional scope of electronics, or consumer electronics or the computer industry. If we get a little closer to home for those that are based in the New York or New Jersey area, now you start to see in the upper left here a little bit of a variation now. So you see that, boy, still masks, number 1 here. And I think this probably reflects, well, masks have been in the top 2 or 3 for, over a year, frankly. We think that some of this has to do with the slow but sure opening. Schools, businesses, and other things. And, companies stockpiling, an amount of face masks to make sure that they can manage through this for an extended period of time. You're also seeing a tremendous interest in recycling services, and there's a lot of dynamics around this, but particularly around plastic recycling services, fulfillment services, pick, pack, and ship services. And this is industrial strength. But again, this is really a driver of this dramatic acceleration we've seen in e-commerce. And so as e-commerce has jumped the equivalent of 10 years within a single year, we're seeing a bunch of different dynamics there. So number 3, fulfillment services, but believe it or not, number 4 in labels. You'd think, industrial sourcing for, producing labels. Why would you see that? Well, e-commerce is probably one of the largest drivers to that, but so is the pandemic itself. So you're seeing a tremendous amount of, around vials and syringes. There needs to be labels that are, mission critical in terms of, categorization. When you check in to get a vaccine or for a doctor's appointment, there's a series of labels that are proprietary to you as a patient. There's been an increase in the demand around that that's significant. You look at things like candle making equipment and supplies, and again, these are volume, sourcing around this. There has been an enormous lift in consumer purchases that are about just making your home environment a little more pleasant. And candles have been blowing up, as they say, and in demand. And so as you go upstream on that, you see the manufacturing and then all the sourcing around the related equipment and services to produce candles growing as well. I won't walk through each one of these, but you can get a sense of food products, again, on a huge growth curve. We're seeing a tremendous amount of sourcing around what we believe to be ghost kitchens. And if you haven't heard that term, what it basically means is the food delivery companies are now starting to source their own kitchen equipment and structure, not with the intent the consumer would ever go in that kitchen, but with the idea that they would continue to order through delivery services, and they would be able to fulfill against that by producing or cooking their own food in these ghost kitchens. If you look to the bottom right of this, who's doing a lot of this sourcing here? So the top 10 companies that are sourcing in and around New Jersey or New York, and some are in New York, as you can tell, or New Jersey area, some are global companies. Snap-on at the top there, you see a cross-reference of a range of East Coast, if not New York-based universities. Fresh, which I believe is connected into the produce and delivery business. And then you clearly see state in New York State itself, and then rounding out with Shinsu Beverage Company. One of the trends that we're tracking very, very carefully is the dynamic around ESG. And I would assume most of the listeners are paying attention to this trend: environmental, social, and corporate governance. And basically, you're seeing a couple of different things come together here. You're seeing a tremendous amount of consumer interest around these issues. They want to know, what the environmental, social, and corporate governance philosophies, values, if not commitments, are from the companies whose products and services they buy from. Regulatory issues are starting to break out around this, and we've seen some major hedge funds that have publicly come out and said, we are going to consider ESG when we make our investments. Well, we can certainly start to see this in sourcing data. So an example here would be in the category of renewable energy as expressed by solar. You can see a really remarkable growth in demand for not just solar energy equipment, but we broke this down by the long tail, and you can see some really fascinating dynamics here where we believe that ESG is driving part of this, because solar has been in demand for a while, but we're seeing an acceleration around it. We're also seeing an acceleration around renewable energy in the force in wind turbines, and so you can see the data there of a dramatic lift in hydroelectric turbines, and then also wind turbines. Okay, so what I'd like to do with that is a bit of a backdrop of what's happening for those of you that are local and what's happening in that part of the marketplace in terms of products and services. I want to talk more broadly about what's driving the future of manufacturing and why we emphasize so much that future is happening right now and taking place in a very, very dramatic way. The first primary thing to pay attention to now is new and advanced technology. And what you're witnessing is a dramatic acceleration of the adoption of automation and robotics and what we would think of as advanced manufacturing technology. So here as well, you can see some meta categories like automation, and then broken down by individual categories ranging from factory automation systems, where we're seeing just in the first quarter of this year a 400% increase on a very healthy category. Factory automation systems up dramatically, automation equipment itself, and then you can start to see some fascinating subsets. Robotic arms as a subset of robotics, and then over on the far right of the infographic here, you can see what's happening in sensors. And there's two things to point out here. One is, there's clearly been a sustained investment in advanced manufacturing, and it's quite the story about a resurgence in North American manufacturing. But that investment's been happening for a long time. I think what's starting to happen now too, though, we're starting to see some new opportunities, if not yet new business models, start to emerge in manufacturing. So the growth in sensors would be a good example of this. Most all of you are familiar with the term IIoT, the Industrial Internet of Things. And all that really means is we can now hook literally anything up to the internet. So the idea of putting a relatively inexpensive sensor connected to perhaps a traditional industrial product or service, and then be able to capture that data and offer services, products, insights, design, and development based on that real-time data is happening, all over the place right now. Some really just remarkable trends that are going on by that the dynamics of investment in technology. We are seeing a sustained increase and perhaps an acceleration of reshoring. And reshoring is somewhat of a complicated topic, and I'll just take a minute and see if I can provide some insights here. By reshoring, what we are talking about here would be companies looking to reshore to North America some, if not all, of their manufacturing. Now, there's a lot of reasons why this is happening. It's been happening over the last about 12 years. It's been on a steady clip over the last 12 years. We've seen a significant jump that took place during the pandemic. And we believe there's a lot of reasons for that. Partly the original thesis or the math underneath that fueled a lot of outsourcing or offshoring that happened in the 70s has come under scrutiny. And in many cases, that original math didn't hold up particularly well. Second thing is the influx of technology that I mentioned before has made North American manufacturing competitive on the global stage. The third is the dynamics of logistics. And this came in the supply chain disruptions that we're still feeling from the pandemic, which basically means the ability to stand up manufacturing near clusters of customers versus manufacturing at a location that I might really be challenged by the time it pulls all the way through and all the delays and incremental costs to get it to customers. So a lot of things happening. One other thing I would mention here, you are seeing foreign companies locate manufacturing in the US. You are not seeing US companies only manufacture in the US. The dynamics of reshoring actually make North American companies more capable and more competitive on the global stage. And it helps the global economy when we see this dynamic playing out. So again, don't mean to linger so much on this topic, but it tends to be one that I think a lot of people misuse to state about these facts and figures. We view this as a very healthy thing for the overarching, let's call it manufacturing economy around the globe, and certainly having a healthy North American manufacturing economy assists in that category as well. Let's stick a little closer to home in the United States here. We are probably on the precipice of the largest market opportunity US manufacturing has seen in 70 years. There's a lot of reasons for that. Many of I've already touched on, but I would also add in there the Buy American Act, the government infrastructure spending, supply chain reshoring, which has been touched on, and then also what has been touched on is the investment that's been over a period of time in advanced manufacturing, automation, and IIoT. So you are clearly seeing, if not a renaissance in US manufacturing, you're seeing an unprecedented market opportunity and literally the largest one that most manufacturers in this country have ever seen in their career. Okay, so with that as a bit of a backdrop, let me speak a little bit more directly to folks that are involved in manufacturing. And these are a series of things that we're watching play out. I'm going to give you some recommendations, but just some major observations that you want to pay attention to. We tend to talk a lot about digital transformations, and everybody talks about these days of digital transformation of this function or that function. We're living through an age where we're using digital technology to communicate in virtual events like this. Many of us are communicating and running our companies through digital technology these days, and we've seen a pretty significant acceleration of that digital transformation. Most manufacturers, if you look at the flywheel on the right here, are very familiar of the digital transformation in how they produce their products and services. And that's an ongoing dynamic, but they're probably most familiar with that. What oftentimes manufacturers are less prepared for and perhaps somewhat unfamiliar with is there's now a very, very aggressive digital transformation of functions we would think of as front office. So industrial and manufacturing, marketing and sales are going through a tremendous accelerated digital transformation. And in many cases, manufacturing companies are struggling with this. That's not traditionally how they either went to market or engaged with customers. If you remember when I said we've seen an evolution, if you will, in the workforce, well, think of this as the purchasing side. So procurement professionals and engineers, if over 50% of those folks that are sourcing from you right now are millennials, as much as 75% of their decisions are made before they ever engage directly with anyone at the company, including a sales rep. So that's a pretty radical transition. In addition, there's also a transition happening in company cultures today, and digital transformation is playing a role there as well. We've touched on this idea of the digital transformation of your production facilities, and we could spend weeks going through all of the nuances here, but automation, industrial Internet of Things, and artificial intelligence are three that if you're not already paying a lot of attention to, you should, regardless of where you sit in the ecosystem. Automation is exactly what it sounds like, but it's far less today about just raw efficiency. You know, can I drive 1% more production with 1% less people? That actually isn't where the action is today. What it really is now is about human plus machine. So it's augmented capabilities. So pay attention to what's going on in the automotive industry and other industries where we're actually not replacing jobs with this automation. We're actually augmenting jobs with this automation. I was asked at a briefing not too long ago about the skills shortage and the need for, you know, all these jobs to be filled in U.S. manufacturing. And somebody asked me, you know, are these white collar jobs or blue collar jobs? And I said, it's the wrong way to look at it. These are new collar jobs. These are high tech jobs, but also with an understanding of how to manufacture products and services. IIoT, we talked about earlier. I would emphasize this and then the next one of artificial intelligence because it is opening up a tremendous range of new business models. We're starting to see manufacturing as a service, as a subscription service. You're starting to see companies locate 3D printing or additive manufacturing into a customer's facility so that they can literally manufacture parts on demand. You're starting to see applications of artificial intelligence that are able to look at data sets that are just massive amounts of data sets to provide extraordinary insights into the production of products and services, up to including things like digital twinning and things so that we can far cheaper and more quickly understand dynamics and provide products and services for customers. Now, if you think about this idea of, gee, there's a digital transformation happening in my front office. What does that mean today? Well, the use of data could be around customers, could be around market trends, could be around all kinds of different, you know, somebody expressing interest in your company or your product or service. Today, they're leaving digital footprints. If you don't have the ability to see those digital footprints and understand what they might mean and engage with those folks as they work through 75% of their process without ever speaking to you, you now in a position where you need to understand how to provide that kind of data for your company and then provide that accessibility and make it operationalized, meaning you can act on it to be able to engage prospects, turn prospects into customers, and then continue to work with those customers and continue to improve their customer experience. This is obviously raising the specter of cybersecurity. And this, just to be clear, the issue of cybersecurity is not an emerging market. It has emerged, and it is a significant issue, and it's a significant issue in manufacturing. As I said before, with IIoT, we are hooking everything up to the internet, which by definition means everything is vulnerable today. So as you're starting to think about the future of your company, not only do you want to make sure that your front office functions are going through an appropriate pacing of digital transformation so you don't get left behind, you also want to make sure that you're doing so securely and with an eye towards being able to make sure you're not vulnerable. Company culture is also going through a digital transformation, and not simply because of multi-generations in the workforce today, although that's a piece of it, but the use of data to steer decision-making and to improve your customer experience, to create new products and services, to compare yourself to what's going on out in the market today, really requires not only the access and use of data, but you need to lift the overall data literacy in your company. Many of us didn't grow up being data analysts. We didn't grow up other than receiving data as an output. And so improving data literacy, and that connects to continuous learning within organizations, has become the norm today. There's a lot of ways to do this. Don't be intimidated by any of these observations, but these are things that you need to be thinking about. And then ultimately, you want to be able to use these tools to create more agility. And it seems funny in the same sentence to talk about manufacturing and agility. You know, if I'd said this 15 years ago or 20 years ago, people would have thought, you know, hey, this doesn't make a lot of sense. Today, you need to, but you also have the opportunity to be much more agile in your business through the use of many of these remarkable digital tools and the use of the transformation itself. Putting it all together, your digital playbook for success today really is this flywheel amongst your production facilities, your front office functions, and your company culture. And what sits in the center is your ability to identify and stream, if you will, real-time data into those functions to improve your decision-making and ultimately grow and improve your business. So as we round out the talk here today, here's just 10 trends that I just highly recommend you keep an eye on here. Automation, we've touched on, and that's something that I call it a horizon goal. There is no there. You're ultimately going to be looking at endlessly kind of tweaking how you use technology and automation. You know, one of the things I also note to people is digital transformation is not an end state. Digital transformation should start to enable business model transformation. And many people will ask me, how do I know I'm there? When it comes to digital transformation, I'll say, when you're starting to be able to innovate with your business model in an industry like manufacturing, it means you're starting to get the digital transformation in the right zone. We talked about artificial intelligence and machine learning. And for those that haven't started down this path, just watchwords to get involved. Start small, think big, and don't be afraid to test. I mentioned this idea of new collar jobs. We are going through a complete reimagining, has been discussed earlier. And in that reimagining, we're reimagining what manufacturing is to a great extent, but we're also reimagining business processes, and it's creating a series of different types of jobs. And these jobs require enhanced skill sets. So whether you're training and developing on an ongoing basis current staff, or you're recruiting new people, keep that idea of a new collar job in mind. Understand how to harness the trend of reshoring and make it your friend. We are clearly seeing disruptions, and they are not going to end in supply chain and logistics. We believe that we're witnessing a fairly healthy level of overstocking and second sourcing that we haven't seen in perhaps ever. And most big companies aren't going to put that out. They're not going to say publicly, hey, we've decided to oversource for this so we don't get caught with a supply chain disruption again, but we're clearly witnessing that right now. Again, make that trend your friend. Is there an opportunity for you to serve as a second source, or perhaps even tertiary source, where before, you were calling on a prospect that was only going to go with a single source? The changing of the workforce, and I'd differentiate this from the new collar jobs comment, the changing of the workforce means we have the broadest demographic stretch since demographers have looked at US business in the workforce at the same time. And what's fascinating about this does not mean the millennials are pushing the baby boomers out, or the baby boomers are fighting with these upstart millennials. It's quite the opposite. What we're seeing is actually quite a fascinating dynamic playing out, where baby boomers are able to mentor and help accelerate the experience of a millennial manager. And conversely, millennials, because particularly with their digital mindset and digital skills, are inspiring baby boom generation to embrace some of these new technologies. Alternative energy, we talked about, it is accelerating. And I think whether you look at that's for environmental purposes, or it is for just pure dollars and cents purposes, you're going to see a huge acceleration there. Ford has recently announced that they're going to have their own battery technology by 2025. You're just going to see this continue to build out. And I think that's a very exciting thing. Keep an eye, and if you've got the opportunity to provide yourself as a supplier or a product and service in that category, you might want to really explore that. We talked about the need to pay attention to cybersecurity. It's not going to go away. It is, to a certain extent, the issue of our times. And as business leaders, let alone governmental leaders, it needs to be something that we have an ongoing understanding of, and very, very careful and prudent approaches to make sure that we're dealing with it. You've all heard the term over and over and over again, big data and analytics. Big data has always been around. Analytics has always been around. We've never lived through an era, however, where we could go through data sets that are in the big analytics or big data category as quickly, as easily as we can today. Now, I emphasize analytics because actually having access to more data doesn't make you smarter. I wish it did. Gosh, my life would be so much easier because I have access to a lot of data. Trust me when I tell you, it doesn't make you smarter, but I do think that the tools today to be able to glean insights out of real-time data have never been, more powerful. So take advantage of those. And here as well, if you're not really starting down this path yet, start small, think big, and start experimenting. The last thing is the future of work that I'll note here. The irony that we're talking about the future of work while we speak to a couple hundred folks virtually is not lost on me. And we believe in watching a lot of the trends that we're not just going to see a simple pendulum swing back. That the work is going to change, and exactly what that means, I think, is unclear. But we encourage companies to think of ways, if you've gone to a remote first, office second kind of dynamic, even in manufacturing, is that something that you could continue? Are there benefits to that? Rethink the use of an office, not as in have one or don't have one, but how could I use it in a way that we get the benefit of really having an office just versus just the drudgery of somebody commuting into an office so that we can check to see they're doing their work. Again, we believe we're seeing data that this is going to be a lasting trend. Exactly what that trend looks like, we're not sure, but we encourage, and we're doing it ourselves, is really start to think deeply about what that future of work, and are there trends coming out of the pandemic that could be benefits for you as you think about the way you work and run your business. Hey, as we turn it over to questions, I am happy to get in touch with anybody or have you reach out. This is my email that's on the screen here. I'm quite active on social media as well. I regularly post our data, and we produce a weekly video with a lot of our data in it. We also have a daily email newsletter, Thomas Industry Update, that you can find on thomasnet.com. It's free, and we share a lot of our data through that. And my Twitter handle is also on the screen. So with that, let me pause, and Kinda, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thank you so very much, Tony, for this great presentation. I think we have time for just a few questions. Let me see what we have. So, Tony, you've covered a lot of information for sellers or manufacturers looking to list their products, or for those of us looking to find suppliers. How do you get started?
Yeah, we provide both free and paid services around, getting listed, getting found, and growing your business. So if you log on to thomasnet.com, you can create a supplier, what we call a supplier discovery profile. You can do that for free. And then we have a series of paid programs where it would boost that presence and reach and engagement out into the marketplace. And that's one way to make sure that you do it. It is really an interesting dynamic, and I will admit this is going to sound dramatically self-serving here, and I don't mean it to. But Kinda, given your background, you can relate to this. If you look at business to business, so contrast that to business to consumer for a minute. The vast majority of demand in business to business products or services, manufacturing being amongst them, up until the last few years, most of that demand has still been created offline, right? Trade shows, distributors, the local rep who knocked on doors, that's the way that operated for years. And then, slowly but surely you saw the world starting to change, not just because of the pandemic, but we've seen a dramatic change in that. And I think the biggest thing I would say, if you have not started to really build out, programs and infrastructure around digital engagement of prospects, customers, and current customers, you need to start, because it is shifting very rapidly. And history teaches us that those that make those kinds of investments and take those steps start to pull away from those that don't.
So you mentioned artificial intelligence and machine learning. Again, do you have recommendations on how to get started?
Yeah, there's a lot of places to start, and I think I use the simplistic, my Forrest Gumpian comment I always make about this stuff is, start small, think big, and be willing to test. There are a series of artificial intelligence applications you can start to experiment on your own. You don't have to buy all this infrastructure and bring it in. There are artificial intelligence advisories or consultants that you can have come in and look at applications and tools that you might want to do. We produce a ton of content, both in Thomas Industry Update daily email newsletter, but also Thomas Insights, which is a section on thomasnet.com. And there's huge amounts of information on primers of getting started with artificial intelligence, case studies of how companies are using it, resources for not only reading and other ways that you can look at it. The one thing I also emphasize is there are applications or tools you can use that leverage artificial intelligence, meaning you don't have to build the infrastructure yourself to be able to be a beneficiary of it. I'll give you one real simple one. We're customers of a service called Gong, as in ringing a gong. And it's an artificial intelligence that permission-based records phone calls with prospects and customers, and then it uses artificial intelligence to identify not only keywords, but duration, the balance between your speaking and a prospect speaking, and then tracks that back to whether you had a successful sale out of that call or not. And then that data is fed back into the coaching and development of our customer success team. And so there's a great example of artificial intelligence. We do have artificial intelligence infrastructure that we use for different purposes, but that's a good example of using an application that can teach you a lot about artificial intelligence, but you're not actually developing the AI yourself.
Got it. Thanks, Tony. Just one or two last questions, given that we're running out of time. Are you seeing an increase in M&A activity in the industrial economy? Sorry.
Yeah, Cindy, we are, and it's pretty dramatic. We just recently launched something called the Thomas M&A Tracker, because we were getting asked so much by the hundreds of thousands of suppliers that are on our platform that they're getting folks reaching out from private equity and other equity instruments about either investment or an out-and-out acquisition. There's $1 trillion with a T, $1 trillion of unspent capital by private equity companies in the US. That's only in the US. And what's happened over the last few years, for the same reasons that we've just outlined here, is private equity sees manufacturing as very attractive. And then, Kendi, you have another dynamic here, is a very large portion of existing manufacturing businesses were started by baby boomers who are at retirement age. And many of them are starting to either say, hey, I don't have an heir that I'm going to pass this on to. It might make sense to look at selling a portion of this or selling the company. So there's a fascinating dynamic there. Any of the attendees, again, you can get access to this M&A tracker for free. We predict you're going to see an increase as manufacturing, particularly in North America, it becomes quite an attractive asset class for investors.
And the last one, we could go on, there are many questions, but I'll keep it to one last question. You talked about the future of work. You talked also about white collar, blue collar, and new collar. What new skills do you see the new workforce requiring?
Yeah, I think really, it revolves around data literacy. And I know that sounds like a kind of a generalized term, but one of the things that we're seeing is, let's say it's a CNC machine shop, right? A classic manufacturing service. Let's say it could be a producer of PPE that's a combination of cutting and sewing and maybe even manufacturing of fabrics and materials. Those skills don't go away. The technology is moving, but what's really happening that's interesting is the ability to get real-time data about the trends in those markets, and specifically the trends with individual customers, and understand the customer experience. People need now to add that data analytics into it so that they can best serve that customer. And it really cuts into something I was saying before, where we're seeing examples of customers that are creating the equivalent of software as a service for manufacturing. And the way they're doing that is they're just watching the data from the customer, and they're looking to improve the customer experience. So long way around to your simple question. I really do think a lot of it has to do with digital tools, but particularly data literacy is probably the biggest area that is key to the development of our existing, let alone the new workforce.
Thank you, Tony, very much. I encourage everyone to reach out to you and to Thomas. I just wanted to thank you again on behalf of everyone for your insights that are always so thought-provoking and so valuable. And thanks for your generosity always.
Thank you, Kenda, and thanks to everybody.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna hand it over to Andrea now for the rest of the program. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Tony, I'd like to echo Kenda's thanks as well. And Kenda, I'd like to thank you for inviting Tony to be our featured keynote today. So informative. Thank you very much. So moving on to the remainder of the program, we have a couple of nice things coming up quickly. I'd like to ask Carmela Mamas to present the U.S. Export Appreciation Certificate. Over to you, Carmela.
Oh, thank you so much, Andrea, and thank you for all your dedication and outstanding work as the chair for the New York District Export Council. First, before I present the U.S. Department of Commerce Certificate of Appreciation, I would like to thank the World Trade Week Steering Committee and the New York District Export Council for presenting U.S. Commercial Service New York the Global Trade Award. So now, as Andrea said, I'm the director of U.S. Commercial Service New York. We're the export promotion arm of the United States Department of Commerce, and we have over 100 export assistance centers in the U.S., and we're in over 70 countries, and we all go by U.S. Commercial Service. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Terrence Martell. Dr. Martell is the director of the Weissman Center for International Business at Baruch College City, University of New York. The Weissman Center produces the CSR Sustainability Monitor, which analyzes CSR reports from corporations around the world. Dr. Martell is the chairman of ICE Clear US, the US clearinghouse for ICE's future and obtaining trading, a director of ICE Clear Credit, where he chairs its risk committee, and vice chair of ICE Futures, US or ICE Futures, where he chairs its risk committee and vice chair of ICE Futures, US. Dr. Martell serves as a board member of the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce and is director and treasurer of One2 World, an international education services organization. Dr. Martell is a member of the New York District Export Council, where he has served for over 16 years. This is an appointment by the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, and it is an extremely important role in which he supports the mission of my office and the U.S. Department of Commerce to assist small to medium-sized companies to export and create more U.S. jobs. Terry has provided support in many ways. At the heart of his work, he has demonstrated a commitment to Baruch students and to supporting the small businesses in New York. Most importantly, Dr. Martell spearheaded the development of innovative academic programs within the Zicklin School of Business at Baruch College to help students develop their skills in international business. These programs include the MS in Marketing and International Business, as well as the undergraduate major in International Business. One of the recipients of the Rising Star Awards this year, Geraldine Chardonnat, is currently a student in the MS program. Geraldine is pursuing her degree while building her career at Estee Lauder. Dr. Martell also worked in Baruch's Division of Continuing and Professional Studies to offer a series of certificates in import and export to practitioners in the field. New York District Export Council members have been important partners in making these programs a success. Terry's greatest gift was offering the center's deputy director, Lena Sku, to volunteer her time as chair of the World Trade Week Steering Committee for more than 16 years. The steering committee has worked throughout these many years under the great leadership of Dr. Martell and Lena to make World Trade Week NYC the outstanding success it is today. Those who have joined the annual World Trade Week NYC kickoff and international awards breakfast truly miss the wonderful conference space with the adjacent exhibit hall, which holds over 250 attendees, all involved in the international trade community in the New York region. This was all made possible by Dr. Martell's generosity in hosting the main event. In addition to providing the space, Terry invited Baruch students and colleagues to help design, set up, staff, and manage the International Trade Awards breakfast. These dedicated colleagues arrived at 6:45 a.m. to support event setup and to greet guests. Several of the most memorable moments over the years are Terry's roles as MC for the International Trade Awards breakfast. Hopefully, we will be able to resume the awards breakfast at Baruch College in 2022 and invite Terry to join us as a guest of honor. Dr. Martell, your advice and encouragement have provided many of us has been truly invaluable and will be sincerely missed. Not only are you one of our most important partners, you're a colleague and a friend. On behalf of the U.S. Department of Commerce, I am presenting you with a certificate of recognition for your steadfast dedication to the New York District Export Council, World Trade Week NYC, and outstanding role in promoting American exports. Congratulations, Terry. All my best wishes.
Camilla, thank you very much. And note, I pronounced your name correctly.
Thank you. There's always a first for everything.
That's why I'm never coming back. No, I'm teasing. Camilla, thank you very much for this singular honor. The Weissman Center for International Business at Baruch College is very proud to have been able to play an important role in the growth and success of World Trade Week over the past years. Deputy Director of the Center, Lena Sku, and I set a goal to make World Trade Week New York City reflect the importance of the Port of New York and New Jersey to this region. With its tens of thousands of high-paying jobs and elaborate tri-dimensional logistical systems, international business has always been at home here. The Weissman Center recognized an obligation to help foster an appreciation of the role of international business and international trade to the economy of the region. Lena Sku has chaired the organizational committee for years. This is the committee that continues to develop new programs and recognize emerging leaders in our business. In honoring me, you are really honoring Lena. As I look back on my decades-long participation, I am justifiably proud of the progress World Trade Week has made. Each passing year brings more prominence to World Trade Week. It has become the must-attend event for the international business community. The decision Lena and I made to aggressively support World Trade Week was clearly a successful one. It is a distinct pleasure to have played some part in this success. Thank you again for the certificate of recognition, reflecting the good work of the Weissman Center for International Business. I deeply appreciate it.
Well, congratulations, Terry. Let's see that certificate. And I took a quick photo the old-fashioned way. So back to you. And oh, wait, hold it up, Terry, one more time.
We'll do it one more time and get a good photo.
All right. All
Done?
right.
Thank you.
Over back to you, Andrea.
Thank you, Carmela, and congratulations, Dr. Martell. It's really such a pleasure to work with you and the Weissman Institute and Lena Skou. Thank you so much. I'd like to invite Nancy Plager now, the Executive Vice President and Secretary of the Board of the International Women's Entrepreneurial Challenge Foundation, who will provide us with our closing remarks to what has been really a terrific virtual event. And Nancy is always a great speaker and great remarks. Nancy, over to you.
Thank you, Andrea. And I'm just, as they say in England, gobsmacked at all of the information that Tony has provided for us. I took copious notes and my hand is tired from writing, which we're not used to writing anymore. We're used to typing. But I wanted to make sure that I jotted down all of the pertinent information. And congratulations, Terry. We miss you. We're so sorry we weren't able to hold the World Trade Week kickoff this year at Baruch, which we always look forward to, and is such a special event for all of us. But hopefully, as Andrea said, we'll be able to do that next year. So we're excited that you joined us today, and we encourage you to attend the other events. We have over 33 events posted on our calendar from the time that we started to celebrate World Trade Week, which in essence has become World Trade Week month. So there are a lot of great events that our partners are holding. We have our Women's Leadership event tonight at 6:30 with the kickoff by Carolyn Maloney and a great panel of successful women business owners. And I, as leading an organization that supports women business owners around the world, I'm so thankful for the data and information that Tony did give us. I hope that you all do reach out. I hope that you all find out more about Thomas if you're not familiar with them, all the great services they have, great information. We need to analyze this data. We need to be data driven. And as Tony said, we need to be have digital literacy as we all move forward. This is the only way to do it in today's world. So thank you all for coming today. Very excited you were able to join us. I hope you picked up a lot of great information as I did. And congratulations to Terry, all the other awardees that we're so excited to celebrate with. And hopefully we'll see you next year in person. Thanks so much. Back to you, Andrea.
Oops. Sorry. Thank you so much, Nancy, and everyone who was involved in this year's event. And to all our attendees, thank you for bearing with us through our first virtual session. We hope you found it informative. Thank you to the World Trade Committee. And we'll look forward to seeing everyone next year. Thank you.